Have you ever knit with acrylic yarn and then wondered what is the best way to block this project? That is the dilemma I'm having right now. So I decided the best way to figure that out is to swatch and to test. That's what we're going to do in this video. Before we do, I just want to say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a certified knitting instructor and a knitwear designer, and my goal is to help you become a more confident, adventurous knitter. Now, this question about the proper way to block an acrylic yarn came up because I'm knitting a cardigan for my daughter, and she wanted something that would be easy to care for. So we settled on Knit Picks Brava sport weight yarn, which is a 100% acrylic yarn, machine washable and dryable, something that's really easy for her to take care of. But after I knit the cardigan pieces, they are all curled up, which you would expect because it's just a stockinette. So all of the edges are curled up, which makes it a little difficult to sew those pieces together. Now, I know if that sweater had been knit in wool, I could get them wet, pin them out, and those edges would stay nice and flat so I could sew it up easily. But I honestly wasn't sure if this method would work with an acrylic yarn. Acrylic is a water-resistant fiber, so I don't think getting it wet and pinning it out is going to be enough to straighten those edges so I can sew the pieces together. But the best way to find out is to swatch and to test. So I decided to sit and knit some swatches. So I knit 6 little swatches while I binge watched a few episodes of Sanditon. I have my control swatch, so I could just see what the original fabric looked like before I did anything to it. And then I knit another swatch and I followed the ball band label, which in this case was to machine wash and then tumble dry on low. And then I also did a spray block swatch. This one I pinned out to size without stretching it, and then I sprayed it until it was very, very wet. And then I did use a paper towel to get some of the water off my pins that were holding that swatch in place. And then I steam blocked a swatch. I pinned this one out to size, I didn't stretch it at all, and then I gently steamed it on a low setting with a handheld steamer. And then I had a swatch that got soaked in water for 20 minutes, just lukewarm water. This would be the wet block swatch. Then I squeezed out the water and pinned it out to size without stretching it, just trying to keep it in the size and shape that it wanted to be. And then for the last swatch, I just wanted to test something out. So this one was also soaking in water for 20 minutes, and then I squeezed it out. But the difference here is with this one, I stretched it as much as I could just to test and see if it would stay stretched out or if it would bounce back into its original shape. So before we get to the results of my experiment, if you are enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up so it would reach more knitters. Thank you so much. So up here we have our wet block swatch. And that one wants to curl right up again too. Fabric looks fine though, and I can still see some tension issues in a few places, but it's not terrible. Then we have one that I spray blocked. So let's see what that one wants to do. Yep, same thing. That one wants to curl right up too. Does not want to stay flat. Well, I can push them flat a little better than the machine wash. That will not stay flat. Okay, and then we have this one down here was steamed. It's not curling up. So this is a good method for when you need straight edges. That works. But I think it does look a bit flat compared to some of the other fabrics. But let's finish this last one and then we'll look at all of them. Okay, now this one was also wet blocked. All right, it's a lot flatter than the other wet block, but it looks like it didn't stretch out too much, a little bit perhaps. All of these swatches are exactly the same number of rows and stitches, so perhaps a tiny bit larger. And over a larger project, it might stretch out, but this is just the day after it was stretched. If I check this in a week, we'll see how much it has stayed this way, but that does actually help flatten it out a little. So let's look at all of these. So as far as wanting straight edges to seam a garment, obviously steaming it is the way to go. That is very nice and flat. It's going to be easy to seam something because your edges are straight and those selvage stitches are really easy to get to, not like the ones here that are curled over. But also, the one where it was stretched, it's not quite as flat, but that is not bad for full stockinette stitch. I mean, there is some curling on the sides. It curls under and it curls up on the top. And if I play with it, I can make it curl more. But it does go back flat. But it is obviously stretched out a little. Up here looks stretched out where I had it pinned. Those stitches look larger and like they've been stretched out. And it does look taller than the other swatch, slightly. So it does look like you can make a change in the size of a garment by stretching it, but it's no guarantee it's going to stay this way. In a week, this might squish down a little more. So for seaming a garment, knit in pieces in acrylic, steaming it first is going to make a big difference. But then my second consideration was the actual fabric. I wanted to loosen and relax the fabric, and usually getting it wet does that. So let's take a look at these to decide which method works the best for creating a nice fabric. So this is the original, and you can see the lumps and bumps in there if you look closely. You can see I've got some ridges and unevenness in the pattern, and I'm concerned that if I were to steam it just like this, that it would preserve those ridges and that uneven tension. Because it does still have, if I look at this here, I can see some unevenness still in it. So, and it does honestly look flatter. Like it looks like I flattened. I was very gentle. I tried not to steam too much, but it looks like I flattened the stitches. They're not as plush as the unblocked swatch. So you do have to be careful with flattening your work, I suppose, with steaming. All right, so this is following the recommendation on the ball band, which was to machine wash and dry. It's hard to see because it wants to roll up, but I can still see some tension issues here and there. Not that bad though. I think it actually helped relax. Maybe the going through the washing machine helped it relax a little bit and even out some of the issues. It doesn't look that bad. Now wet blocking. This looks really good. I don't see much for tension issues, like one section there and maybe a little bit here. But that looks really good, I think, as far as the fabric itself. I mean, it's obviously curling and you would not want to seam this. But the fabric, I think, looks really good. Might be just as good as the machine. Now for the spray blocking, I can still see tension issues in the same places, it looks like, as well. So I don't think those really helped relax the fabric too much, and it did nothing for the curl. So I'm not sure spraying is a great choice. And stretching it out. I think the fabric actually looks really good. I think stretching them like that really did even out the stitches, except up here where it was stretched along the edge, that doesn't look so great up there. So that's something to consider though, is that stretching it out while it's wet can even out your tension. That's a possibility. I just don't like what it's done along these edges here. So looking at all of these, I think for the actual fabric itself, I prefer the washing machine and the wet blocking. If I had to choose one, let me pin these out so we can really see them. They're hard to see like this. So I think as far as fabric, the machine washing and the wet blocking are fairly close, with a slight better fabric on the wet blocking, I believe. This one still looks like a little more tension issues here than I see in the wet block. So I think if you're going to knit a garment and you don't have any seaming to do, then a good soak before you do the machine wash and dry for an acrylic will help even out your tension. But if it's going to be a cardigan like I'm doing and it's going to be knit in pieces, I think the best option is to soak it first, squeeze it out, pin out the pieces, and then give just the edges that need to be seamed. I wouldn't touch the fabric itself because I do feel like it's flatter. It's not as thick and plush as the other swatches. I flattened it out and I did not steam it very much. So I think for sewing though, I would lightly steam just where I'm going to be seaming it up. I just had to come back and share a little update. I seamed up the cardigan. You can see it right here. It's all sewn up, but what I ended up doing, I did the first step of washing. I soaked it for 20 minutes in the washing machine and then I just let it run on the rest of the cycle. While it was damp, I pinned it out and I started to seam it. I started with the sleeves and I obviously made a real obvious error and melted one spot, and it was just light steaming and I just wasn't careful enough. So I tried a little bit more just along the edges, and then I left the cardigan. I only did one cardigan front, but I didn't do the other one. I just pinned it out and hoped it would uncurl while it was drying, and I didn't do anything to the back. I just wanted to see if I really needed to steam the pieces first or if it would be even noticeable. And as I was seaming, I discovered that I couldn't tell the difference between the pieces that I had steamed and the pieces that I hadn't. So my recommendation now would be to soak your sweater or your sweater pieces and then run them through the washing machine. That really did even out the fabric quite a bit. And then just pin them out while they're still damp after that last spin cycle. And that was enough to help me get to the edges and seam. Of course, it wasn't perfect. With a wool sweater, I can really pin out those edges. But with this sweater, it's still curled up along the edges, but it wasn't terrible to seam. So that would be my recommendation now. If you want to steam something, know that it's really going to set those fibers. And I'll put a picture here of what happened on the sleeve. You can really see this is just with a handheld steamer on light setting, and it still really flattened the stitches right in that one area. So that's still an option if you really want to flatten something out, but it's going to really flatten the whole texture of your knitting. You can use steam for that. But I just wanted to give you that little update that steam, just be careful with it if you're going to try it on your acrylic garments. But I would love to know about your experiences with acrylic. So if you'd like to leave a comment and share your tips and advice about washing and blocking acrylic yarns, I'd love to hear about them. And if you're looking for more information about blocking your hand knits, I have a whole video devoted to this topic. The different ways to block, what you should do with different fibers, the tools and resources you need. It's all in this video. So click right there and I'll see you in the next video.